We have just been referencing Yvette Cooper. Let's listen, remind ourselves as to what she had to say.
In Bolton, clashes between rival groups involved fireworks and bottles thrown. And we saw people targeted on the streets because of the colour of their skin. This disgraceful disorder and racist hatred, including that whipped up by a hateful minority online, was an insult to those grieving over Southport.
So what do you make to some of what she had to say? I'll let you get in touch with me at home, but Alex Deane, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, she's right. They were riots, and people were well entitled to be upset about what happened in Southport. But that, of course, goes no way to justifying what happened, setting fire to buildings and so forth. So that's at the extreme end of what was happening, completely unacceptable. A government has two twin duties, to defend us from external threats and to keep order at home. Yeah. And the first duty at home is to ensure, the streets, there's no civil disorder. And this was, really bad civil disorder, and so the government was right to seek to stop it. But the Shadow Home Secretary, James Cleverly, I thought had a very telling point, because the now government collectively taking the knee during Black Lives Matter, many of us would have thought at the time that was going to come back to haunt them. And so it has, because I thought Cleverly was quite right to say you treat different crimes differently. The blanket condemnation of criminality in the riots is spot on, but that's not how you behave in other circumstances. I also thought he was right to say the government's basically had nothing to say about Notting Hill Carnival double murder, because it just doesn't fit their narrative or their worldview. If you're going to police, you have to police without fear or favour, and that's not what this government seems to be doing.
Should we just play a clip of James Cleverly in case you guys missed it earlier on?
And does she now also recognise that the Labour leadership kneeling in the immediate aftermath of the Black Lives Matter disorder, when violent protesters attacked police officers, looks like her party takes some forms of violence less seriously than other forms of violence? And does she accept that any perception whatsoever of treating the same crimes differently based on the race, religion or community of the perpetrators increases tension rather than reduces it?
Dr. Lee Jones, what do you think to all of this?
Well, I think the difficulty here is that events are complex, right? This wasn't like the 2011 riots, which started off with a grievance about policing but escalated into simple wanton criminality very quickly. In this instance, as with the Black Lives Matter protests, in fact, there were protests and then there was a violent element. And I think, as Alex is absolutely right to say, that these were riots. They were looting. Shops were looted. Rioting did happen. Hotels were attempted to be set on fire with asylum seekers inside. This is totally unacceptable. But I think there were also protests where people were simply trying to express their position, make their voices heard in a way that they don't feel is being heard in the political system. And I think Yvette Cooper could have done more to clearly distinguish between these two groups. Now, some people crossed over from the protests into the riots. This also happened with the Black Lives Matter protests. Academic research has shown the US Black Lives Matter protests, 93 to 96% of those events were peaceful, involving no violence, no destruction of property, but then a small minority committed enormous violence. 25 people were killed, damage estimated at $1 to $2 billion. So the difficulty is that events like these are complex, and what's needed from politicians is a sense of nuance. Right.
I agree with you on the nuance, taking the events in their totality. But the point is the new Home Secretary today made the point that if you attack the police, it's unequivocally wrong. Full stop. And that's right.
Yeah.
But when the police were attacked during the Black Lives Matter protest, the extreme, admittedly, but it happened on that occasion, the leadership of the Labour Party took the knee. Completely wrong.
But what?
My point is it undermined them not just as a serious opposition aspiring to government, it now undermines them in government.
And also, I can hear you. I know some of my audience at home. You will be shouting out things like, what about things like Manchester Airport? It's all well and good, isn't it, standing there saying it's completely wrong, which it is, to assault any police officer or any emergency worker and so on and so forth. It is completely wrong. So why then, weeks later, are we still in a situation, some of you will be shouting, we've all seen the videos by now, where it appears that there was quite a serious assault taking place there, and yet, unless I've missed it, we haven't actually seen any charges. So how do you think Yvette Cooper can defend against those kind of suggestions? Well, hang on a second, when it was BLM, etc., you took the knee. What is the defence there?
She won't. She'll bluster it out. And, the new government has a majority, it's undeniable, and they have that majority with people knowing full well that they took the knee to Black Lives Matter. So she will just, I don't just mean to Black Lives Matter, she took the knee whilst police officers were being assaulted in just the same way that she decries rightly today. So she'll just ignore it and carry on. And that's the joy of being in government afresh, that you can point to your majority and the mandate that you have and basically ignore the vastly diminished ranks of the opposition. Doesn't make you right, though, does it?
No, and one of the things, Lee, that many people will get frustrated about, because nobody condones rioting, whether it's assaulting officers, properties, places of worship, so on and so forth, all of that is categorically wrong. And as for the looting, it's embarrassing. I mean, what kind of individual thinks to themselves, I don't like, they might be arguing against illegal immigration, so therefore I'm going to go into Lush and steal some bath bombs. I mean, I don't even want to undermine it because it is criminal activity, but it's also embarrassing. I'd be absolutely mortified if I was pictured, or even if I was even contemplating behaving that way. Who does that? But then the reaction from the government is, oh, yeah, you're all racist, you're all far right. One of the worst scenes that we saw during these riots were in Hull. And what happened, and everyone's seen these videos as well, there was a car full of what people were saying were foreigners, and therefore a lot of people were going out and attacking. It was awful. It was absolutely horrendous. Were attacking the people within those cars. Well, it turns out that one of the people that's now being found guilty, charged and sent to prison, he's a Moroccan refugee himself. This is a true story, everybody. Look it up when you're bored in Hull. He's a Moroccan refugee. So how is it then that all of these people are just getting called far-right racists, as though it's like this one-size-fits-all catch for anyone?
I mean, I did watch the statement, and although she could have more carefully distinguished between protesters and rioters, and I wish that she had done so, because, of course, when they were taking the knee, I'm not a fan of taking the knee, but when they were taking the knee, they were not bowing down to rioters. They were expressing their sympathy for the political cause, right, which is the mistreatment of black people in the United States and also in the United Kingdom, in the same way that many of your viewers would want to express sympathy for the political cause, which is a sense that policing is uneven and immigration is too high and so on. We should be able to distinguish these two things. When it comes to the riots themselves, I think you would have to distinguish between different people's motivations for taking part, right? So some of them undoubtedly were associated with far-right agitators who were whipping up the violence online. There's no doubt about that. Other people were simply opportunistic thugs who wanted to engage in a bit of mindless violence. And some people just wanted to steal some stuff and wanted to use the cover of the disorder. And frankly, you can be of any skin colour, creed, ethnicity or religion you like, and you can easily fit into any of the last two groups.
Yes. So Lee is spot on, and I think it answers your point about the Moroccan. I didn't know that story about the Moroccan migrant.
Honestly, when you're all bored, look it up in Hull.
But Lee is right, and I saw it at the criminal bar, and it's been the stuff of the courts for many, many decades, that some people just like a punch-up, and a fray, pub, football match, whatever, somebody throws a punch. Most of our reactions is, that's terrible. Some people think, I'll have some of that. And the point is that people get drawn into violence, no matter what the cause. The cause is the mindless violence, and there is no bigger picture behind it. There are some people that like that punch-up, and the point is, you find it hard to understand because it's not rational, it's not how you feel, and that's completely reasonable. The point is, these people aren't reasonable, and it's not restricted to race, colour, creed, background, anything.
You are a barrister, and what do you think, therefore, to the sentencing approach? This.
You have to sentence harshly with civil disorder. You have to sentence harshly in riot to deter people taking to the streets and seeking to tear apart the fabric of civil society.
But what cost, when you're releasing people, other criminals?
Oh, yeah. When you get into that sort of detail, I would have had a completely different approach. Were we living in Deaneland, we would have said, well, you can sue me later for the breach of your human rights. You're going 3 to a cell until your sentences are finished. I wouldn't have been chucking prisoners out at all. I'd have emptied a couple of Category C prisons full prisons that were close to with prisoners that were low risk of reoffending, and I'd have filled them with rioters and doubled the security on them. But this is looking in the rearview mirror and just my own view.
So you think it is right that people have gone to prison for years?
I absolutely
for things
do.
For things that they've written on places like Facebook.
No, not for that. I thought you meant for actual rioting.
No,
I don't mean for statements. No, I don't.
Do you think it's right that people have been going to prison for 4 years for things that they've written on Facebook?
I don't. I draw a very clear distinction between speech and action.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we do so. So even incitement to violence is where most people would draw the line on free speech. I'm a total free speech absolutist. Even that I'm not sure about. Because if I incite you to attack Alex, let's say, and you do it, well, you have a choice about whether you do that or not, whether you listen to my command to you to do it or not.
Yes.
When we jail somebody for incitement and say, I was responsible for you attacking him, you're saying that you're a sponge or a puppet that I can control with my words. And I think that's doubtful. It removes your agency and your responsibility.
I agree with that. There are differences, of course, with being an accessory or under joint enterprise, where instead of just saying, Michelle, attack Alex, if you'd said, the knife is to your right underneath the counter, I popped it there earlier, then you become a participant in the offence yourself. But mere words, I'm inclined to agree with you.
But how do you legally actually prove the link? So, for example, you've just been hearing in the news headlines there, you've got the wife of the Tory councillor. She wrote a post expressing a lot of different sentiments, actually, but one of the ones that's been picked out was the fact she was basically saying, you could set fire to these hotels with these people in it for all she cares, and she didn't care, she says, if that made her a racist. But how do you then prove that the person that's setting fire to that hotel, which I completely I think that is completely wrong, it is appalling behaviour. I mean, who would even think to do such a thing? But anyway, how do you then prove that the person that set fire to the hotel has done so because some Tory councillor from over there said to her followers that that's
I think it was
happened?
the wife of a Tory councillor.
Good point.
Not only can you not, but moreover, it was after the fact, not before it. I mean, I don't know what she wrote, but on your account that you just gave, she was talking about something that already happened. So she can hardly have been inciting people to do it.
No, so this was off the back of the stabbings of the children. She had then taken to her social media and she was saying stuff like...
then they went to set fire to the hotel.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you would have to, I think, demonstrate there was some kind of causality between her posting that and people reading it. You could look at people's IP addresses and see what they'd looked at, but it seems to me a pretty long bow to draw.
What do you make to it all? You'll have strong opinions about this, I am absolutely sure.